The average American family spent $15,300 on food last year. Groceries. Takeout. It adds up quietly month by month, until one day you do the math and realize you've handed over the equivalent of a car payment every single month just to eat. This family hasn't done that in 3 years. They haven't set foot in a grocery store. They don't have a food budget. And they're not living on rice and beans in the dark. They're eating better than most people you know. What you're looking at is half an acre of land, 21,000 square feet. In most American suburbs, that's the size of 2 or 3 residential lots combined. On this piece of ground, a family of 5 grows nearly everything they eat. Vegetables, eggs, cooking oil, flour, preserved fruit that lasts through winter, and enough chickens to put meat on the table every week of the year. Now, before you think this is some extreme survivalist story, it's not. These aren't people who moved to a bunker. They have internet. Their kids go to school. One of them used to be a dietitian. The reason this works isn't willpower or sacrifice. It's something much more interesting. It's systems thinking. And once you understand the 3 systems they use to run this half acre, you'll never look at a patch of dirt the same way again. The first system is how they use space. And this is where most people's instincts are completely wrong. Ask someone to picture a farm, and they'll picture rows. Long parallel lines of single crops, spaced wide apart, stretching to the horizon. That image comes from industrial agriculture, a system designed around the width of a tractor, not the biology of a plant. On a small plot, that model is almost the worst thing you can do. The method this family uses is called biointensive planting. The core idea is simple. Plants are spaced at the closest distance they can tolerate, just close enough that their mature leaves will barely touch. When they reach that point, something interesting happens. The canopy they form together acts like living armor over the soil. It blocks sunlight from reaching the ground, which means weeds can't germinate. It traps moisture, which means less watering. And the root systems growing in such close proximity create a kind of underground network that stabilizes the entire bed. The yield difference is not subtle. Biointensive planting produces 2 to 4 times more food per square foot than conventional row gardening. Not 10% more, 2 to 4 times. But the smarter insight is what they chose to grow and where. Not all crops are equal when you're trying to feed a family. 100 pounds of lettuce sounds like a lot, until you realize it contains fewer than 7,000 calories. That's less than 4 days of food for one adult. The same space planted with potatoes, over 200,000 calories. So the half acre is divided by function, not by season. The largest zone, almost a third of the total space, is dedicated to calorie crops. Potatoes, sweet potatoes, Jerusalem artichokes. These are the crops that keep the lights on nutritionally speaking. They're dense, they store well, and they yield enormous returns per square foot. A second zone handles protein. Beans, peas, lentils grown on vertical trellises to maximize sky space, not just ground space. A third zone is daily vegetables. Tomatoes, squash, kale, herbs. The things that make meals taste like food rather than survival rations. And tucked into one corner, a poultry run. 50 chickens. A full year's worth of meat and a steady supply of eggs. The space they need? 200 square feet. That's smaller than most studio apartment bedrooms. Everything has a place. Nothing is there by accident. The land is treated like a machine with components, and every component has to earn its square footage. But here's the question that most homesteading videos never answer honestly. What happens when nothing grows? Winter in most of the United States lasts 4 to 5 months. If your entire food system depends on things coming out of the ground, what do you eat in January? We'll get to that. But first, The reason the soil on this half-acre keeps getting more productive every single year, without spending $1 on fertilizer. The second system is the one that makes everything else sustainable long-term. And it's built on a principle that modern industrial agriculture has largely abandoned. The soil is alive, not metaphorically, literally. A single teaspoon of healthy garden soil contains more living organisms than there are people on Earth. Bacteria, fungi, nematodes, protozoa, an entire ecosystem operating beneath the surface, breaking down organic matter, cycling nutrients, and making minerals accessible to plant roots. Industrial farming treats soil like a medium to hold plants upright, while you pour synthetic chemicals in. That works for a while, but it destroys the living system underneath. And once that's gone, you're permanently dependent on inputs to grow anything at all. What this family does is the opposite. They work with the biology. The method is crop rotation. They follow a 4-zone system that cycles through the land on a 3-year rhythm. Different crops draw different nutrients from the soil. Heavy feeders like tomatoes, corn, squash pull nitrogen aggressively. But legumes do something remarkable. Their roots form a partnership with specific soil bacteria that pull nitrogen directly from the air and convert it into a form plants can use. They're not just neutral on the soil, they're actively restoring it. So the rotation follows a logic. Heavy feeders go into a zone that was just vacated by legumes. Root crops follow leafy greens. And every few seasons a section goes into a cover crop rest, planted with clover or buckwheat, that adds organic matter back and suppresses compaction. By year 3, yields in the rotated zones were noticeably higher than year 1. By year 5, the soil had transformed. Dark, loose, alive. Nothing like the compacted clay subsoil they started with. The land wasn't wearing out, it was improving. Every year, for free. Compare that to a large-scale commercial farm, where topsoil erodes at an estimated rate of 1 inch every 15 to 20 years. At that rate, the world's agricultural soils have roughly 60 harvests left before they're too degraded to farm at all. 1 inch every 15 years, 60 harvests. This half-acre is going in the other direction. Now, January. The ground is frozen, nothing is growing, and a family of 5 needs to eat. This is where the third system comes in, and it's the one with the deepest history. Humans preserved food without refrigeration for 10,000 years, before electricity existed. The methods didn't disappear. Most people just stopped learning them. The first method is root cellaring. Root vegetables, potatoes, carrots, turnips, beets, parsnips, store remarkably well in cool, dark, humid conditions. A properly built root cellar, insulated below the frost line, maintains a natural temperature between 32 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit through winter. No electricity, no compressor, no energy cost. In those conditions, potatoes last 6 to 8 months. Carrots, 8 to 10. Squash and pumpkins, stored on shelves above the root vegetables, hold for 4 to 6 months. A well-stocked root cellar in October is essentially a fully loaded pantry that doesn't run on anything but earth and physics. The second method is lacto-fermentation. This one tends to surprise people. Fermented vegetables, sauerkraut, kimchi, traditional pickles, don't just last longer than fresh vegetables. They become more nutritious over time. The beneficial bacteria produced during fermentation increase levels of B vitamins, synthesize vitamin K2, and break down compounds in the vegetables that would otherwise block mineral absorption. You're not preserving food, you're upgrading it. A crock of properly fermented cabbage kept cool will be safe and nutritious for a year or more. This family has a row of fermentation crocks that started in September and will be eaten through until the first spring harvest arrives. The third method is dry storage. Beans, lentils, dried corn, wheat berries stored whole and ground fresh into flour as needed. Properly dried and sealed lentils remain viable for 25 years. Whole wheat berries, in their intact form, essentially indefinitely. Walk into this family's pantry in February, and you would not immediately know what season it is. Shelves of glass jars, crates of root vegetables, bags of dried legumes, fermentation crocks lined up along one wall. Every single item on those shelves came from that half-acre outside the window. There's a number I keep coming back to. One adult human needs approximately 730,000 calories per year to live. That sounds enormous. But with biointensive planting at its most productive, an 800-square-foot plot, smaller than a two-car garage, can grow exactly that. Half an acre is 21,780 square feet. A family of 5 needs roughly 3.6 million calories a year. The math works, and people are proving it. Katie Krejci is a former dietitian who now runs a homestead in northern Minnesota. Last year, they produced 99% of all the produce her family ate, and 65% of their total caloric needs, including eggs, their own poultry venison, and maple syrup. They tapped and boiled themselves. She said something I've thought about a lot. I rest easy knowing that we're eating food that is nutrient-dense, picked at its peak state of ripeness, and fully organic. No supply chain vulnerability. No ingredient lists to decode. No wondering whether the tomato that arrived in January was picked green in Mexico and gassed with ethylene to turn red on a truck. Just food. The way it tasted before we decided convenience was worth more than knowing where things came from. Most people watching this will never do what this family did. That's not a criticism, it's just reality. Land costs money, time costs money, and the system we've built makes it genuinely easier to buy a bag of chips than to grow a potato. But I think there's something worth sitting with here. The 3 systems we just walked through, intensive planting, soil rotation, seasonal preservation, aren't new ideas. They aren't inventions of the self-sufficiency movement or back-to-the-land idealism. They're just farming, the way it was done by every human civilization that survived long enough to matter. We stopped teaching these skills roughly 2 generations ago. Most of us have no idea how to do any of them, and almost nobody notices. Until the supply chain breaks, or the prices go up, or the recall notice comes through, and we realize we've handed over something genuinely important without meaning to. What would you start with if you had a patch of dirt, nothing else, and 1 season to make something from it? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one.